So here's the truth about human beings. I want you to really internalize this because this is the foundation of everything I teach. All right? Ready? Human beings are transformative beings. About the only constant we can ever expect in our lives is constant change, right? The question is never whether we'll transform. The question is, what are we transforming into? We grow physically, we grow socially, we learn to sustain healthy relationships, hopefully. We garner knowledge throughout our lives. We choose what we want to deep dive into. We choose what we want to study, what job we want to have, what partner we want to have, what family we want to build, what we want to become. And of course, that journey is very unique to each individual. But this transformational nature isn't optimal, okay? It's built into us. This is in our DNA. It's just how human beings are. And again, it is the secret engine that drives every great story. So, what actually pushes us to transform? Honest truth here, humans don't just jump up and transform out of the goodness of our hearts. We're a little lazy that way. And honestly, I don't like to use the word lazy because it's so negative. It's just part of being human, right? We're always going to follow the path of the least resistance. Our brains always follow the path of least resistance, right? So the only reason we ever truly transform is to alleviate some kind of suffering. We have to be pushed in some way. We have to be motivated, or we won't do the work of the transformation. So understand, when I say suffering, it doesn't have to mean torturous pain. People always think of that. It's either like physical torture or the really intense, heartrending grief of, it can be those things, of course, but it doesn't have to be. Suffering can be very small to create very small changes. So suffering means one of two things. Number one is that we may desire something we don't have. And this could be anything. It can be a relationship. It can be a career, a purpose, a feeling of satisfaction in our lives, maybe a physical object that we just want. When we desire something we don't have, that gap creates a pull and a suffering that spurs us toward transformation. So even if you take something that most people would consider shallow, let's say I want a really expensive sports car, and people are going, oh yeah, poor you, you need to transform to get your car. But it's not really a morality thing. We're just talking about the psychology of it. If that's something that I desire, then I'm going to have to transform myself a little bit, do the work, make the plan, earn the money, whatever the case may be, to eventually get myself that car. So desire is a very powerful motivator, whether it's desire for something deep and meaningful or something more shallow. It doesn't really matter. It's still the desire that's going to spur the transformation. Okay. The second type of suffering is when we're in pain already and we want to escape it. So this can be physical pain, it can be emotional pain, loneliness, fear, grief. Something is hurting, whether physically or emotionally, and we desperately want to stop it. And that desperation pushes us to take action and change. Okay? So again, this is just the psychology of it. Either we want to alleviate pain or we desire something we don't currently have. Those two things are what push us to transform. Then you have to understand sacrifice. Sacrifice is the engine of transformation. Nothing is free, right? Not truly. This is the piece that makes transformation really interesting and relatable from a story perspective. In fact, I don't think I have this in here, but the number one attribute that separates the hero from the villain is the willingness to be self-sacrificial. Okay, very, very important from a what would you call that? Like archetype standpoint. But we're not talking about that specifically today. We're talking about human beings and that we have to sacrifice something in order to transform into something greater than we currently are. It's usually in the form of hard work. We have to give something up. We have to work hard. We have to, we try to have our cake and eat it too at first. Like all of us try that, right? And it never works. We have to throw in some sacrifice if we want to see results. So let's look at an example. Getting into physical shape is always a great example because most people struggle with this, whether it's with weight or just with their health in general, right? So let's say that my health isn't great and I want to lose weight and get into shape. I want to get fit. Well, that may mean giving up the fast food that I love and eat. It might mean waking up early to exercise. And both of those things are sacrificing things that I currently have and enjoy, the types of foods that I'm eating, sacrificing sleep or time spent on other things in order to make room for the exercise, right? So again, sacrifice doesn't have to be, giving your life for something. I mean, it can be that, and that's what we tend to think of when we're thinking in terms of epic fiction. But in terms of the psychology, we just have to sacrifice something in service of either alleviating the pain or getting that thing that we desire. And at first, it's probably really hard. I'm not used to this, right? It's different than what my current routine and my current habits are. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do the wrong form at the gym. I'm probably going to fall off the bandwagon. I'm going to get frustrated. But if I keep going and stick with it, eventually I will transform. I will become stronger. I will become healthier. That's just the way it works. And that journey is going to teach me so much about myself and what I'm capable of. Think about that in terms of fiction writing. The journey of the story that's leading to a transformation. You have to understand that human beings live this same pattern thousands of times throughout their life. And it's not just for big transformations, big lifestyle changes, okay? We follow the same pattern over and over at every single level. So, of course, there are the big changes. This is what we tend to think of in terms of fiction, big transformations. This is going to be things like deciding what your career will be, choosing a partner, having children, changing your core beliefs. These really do tend to shape the trajectory of your life. But you can also have smaller, what I call medium transformations. This usually looks like learning something that up-levels your quality of life. So this can be a new skill, a new craft, learning software, learning a job skill. Maybe you're just interested in something and want to learn more about it, okay? Such as maybe learning to write fiction. Now, something like this can end up shaping the trajectory of your life. For example, if you learn to write fiction and eventually become a career author, that's obviously shaping the trajectory of your life. But it also could be something like, say you want to learn to play the guitar. And it's not because you're ever going to get paid to play the guitar. It's not because you're going to teach anyone or book gigs or anything. You just want to learn to play the guitar for your own enjoyment, for your own music, and maybe to entertain others. Okay, so that's not going to shape the whole trajectory of your life. It's more of a hobby, right? But you're still going to have to go through the transformation of going from someone who has never known how to play guitar to all the stuff it takes, the journey you go through to learn the guitar. So that's what I would call a medium transformation. It's more like learning skills. Then we also have mini or micro transformations. This is going to be something small that only takes a few minutes to a few days of your life. Can't find your keys this morning. Well, you're going to go through a micro transformation. You're going to suffer. Oh no, I'm late. Where's my keys? You're going to have to sacrifice your morning routine to look for them, to figure things out. Maybe you're going to pay out money for an Uber. There could be a lot of sacrifices. And eventually you're going to solve it. You're either going to find them or you're going to go make a new set of keys, right? So it's the same template every time, whether big or small. And that's why we live through that template so many times in our lives. It is the way that we are constantly, day in and day out, minute by minute changing. And they all follow the exact same 5 steps. Now, I will say that this is very high level, but just to give you an idea. Every one of those transformations, losing your keys, falling in love, building a career, learning a craft, they all follow the same template. And this is what transformational human psychology is. It's just the step-by-step of how we change. So from a very, very high level, we have some sort of suboptimal existence. Life is fine. We might be content, but something is off, missing, or quietly wrong. We then recognize what the problem is. We see it clearly and can't unsee it. Then we struggle to solve it. We try, we fail, we get frustrated, we have to sacrifice, then we try again. Eventually we'll get to the point, hopefully, where we overcome it, we break through or make peace with it. And then we can transform, changed on a deep psychological level. Okay, but I'm giving you a whole lot of psychology here. What does any of this have to do with my story? The answer to that question is everything. Because your readers live this template day in and day out, they know it on a deeply subconscious level. So deep, they are usually not even consciously aware of it, okay? But when your story mirrors this template, they connect with it automatically, almost magnetically. They can't help it because it feels like coming home. So most of your readers, just like you before today, most of your readers are not aware of this. They cannot articulate it. You're not going to find a review that says, oh, this author dropped the ball because they did not put enough transformational human psychology into the first escalation in their... No. I mean, they have no idea what that is, right? What are they going to say? They're going to say, I was bored at this part. I didn't understand why this character made that choice and I couldn't get behind it, right? They're going to say what makes sense to them, but you have to learn to translate that into what is missing from your story. So they won't be able to consciously articulate it, but because they live it every day, they feel it, right? It's an emotional thing. It was like what I was saying before. You know, when I watch Rocky Balboa, I've never boxed, right? I've never been in a boxing match, but he is fighting to get into physical shape and to win a competition and overcome something. Most of us have competed at something before. Most of us have had to change ourselves into something else to achieve something. So on a subconscious level, on an emotional level, man, I'm in it with him. I am rooting for him. I am invested in his story and I want to see how it turns out. I want to see if he wins, right? And that's what I mean. They get invested in it because they just feel the shape of this template because they live it every single day. It mirrors the human journey. And they can't help but become invested. They're instantly interested and turning pages and wanting to know how it turns out because they can comprehend it. Remember what we said. If we don't have a frame of reference for something, if we really don't have any experience of it, we can't comprehend it. We get bored and go do something we can comprehend. Using this transformational human psychology or the human template, it makes it so they instantly magnetize to your story because they get it, right? Even if the circumstances are something they have never experienced before on an emotional level, they get it. So they're with you in the story. And this is what you need to do with your story. So the human template for storytelling. That's what I call this very often. And here's the beautiful thing about it. Because your readers are human beings living in this template constantly, when you use it as the framework for your story, something really magical happens. They can't help but slide along with the momentum. They feel the pull toward the end instinctively. They keep reading and keep reading because the framework of what you've built feels so desperately familiar to them on a subconscious level, they don't even have words for it, right? We like to say, and maybe think too on some level, that the reason, a lot of people can sort of start to, what's the word I'm looking for, predict events in a story. And I don't necessarily mean because the story is bad or predictable in a negative way, but it's just that we kind of get a feel for where the story is probably going. And we like to think that that's because we've consumed so many stories that we just start to understand story structure. And there is truth in that, but it's a lot deeper than that. It's not just that we have watched so many movies that we understand story structure. It's that we were built understanding story structure because it's based on the human template, okay? You have to understand that. And this is what people mean when they say a book is a page turner. They can't put it down. Not because the plot is clever, although obviously that helps, but because the story is speaking to something in them that is deeply, deeply recognizable. And that recognition creates emotion that makes them want to keep reading. And guess what? The good news about all of this is that you get to craft that on purpose, and you should craft it on purpose. Not by accident, do it intentionally, because this is a secret weapon that, like I said before, will take whatever genius, unique story you already have and make sure that it will resonate with readers, which is what we want. We want our stories to resonate with readers, but we often don't know how to make them resonate with readers, and we think that we're being told that the only way to do that is to change our story. It's not. You can take whatever story you have and just use this to put emotion in it, and then it will be the unique story that you've come up with, but it will also resonate very, very deeply with readers on a spiritual level, okay? And how you do that is through the emotion. So, why don't most stories do this? Why don't most authors do this? Why don't we teach this? The honest answer is that most people just aren't thinking about it. They think about the plot. What happens next? What's the next cool external event? And plot matters. Of course it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. But plot without the psychological foundations creates what I call an unfocused story. An unfocused story doesn't create enough emotion. Now, there are actually several criteria for what an unfocused story is, and we're going to go into this more in the next few days. But at the end of the day, the problem with the unfocused story is that it doesn't create enough emotion. It isn't deeply satisfying for you, the author, to write. And if there's not enough emotion, it's not going to be deeply satisfying for the reader to read. And it isn't even very marketable, because if you can't tell me how your reader will feel when they read your book, you're going to have really hard time selling it. If the reader finishes it and says it was fine, well, again, fine doesn't create mega fans. It doesn't get gushed about, and it doesn't pay much in the way of royalties. Now, let's do a quick note on pantsing versus outlining. Pantsers actually do have a leg up on outliners. And understand, I have always been a hardcore outliner, so realizing this was an interesting experience for me. But anyway, it's involved, right? So pantsers do have a leg up on outliners for one reason. And that is because they already know how to surrender to the subconscious mind. And we are going to talk about the importance of that tomorrow. So stay tuned on that. But even though they have that leg up, there is a major problem with pantsing. And that is because they sit down and just kind of let their mind go and meander around trying to figure out their story. It produces an unfocused story by default. And that is not a good thing. But the good news is, tomorrow I'm going to show you how to write a focused, intentional story, even if you're a pantser, okay? So you got to understand that you've got pantsing, you've got outlining. It's the great debate in our in our space. And the thing is, there's pros and cons about pantsing. There's pros and cons about outlining. Neither one is completely optimal, but there is a way to get the best of both and let go of the cons, right? But again, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, okay? But I just want you to understand that you don't want to have an unfocused story. That's a negative thing.